Hi, my name is Beth, and you're listening to the Canna Fitness and Nutrition Podcast, where we are hanging out at the intersection of fitness, nutrition, and cannabis. Thank you so much for pressing play today. I'm excited that you're here. If you're new, welcome. I'm Beth Jasinski, personal trainer and cannabis coach and educator. And if you're not new, then thanks for coming back. Today, we're going to talk about when you're the only cannabis user in social settings. And I wanted to bring this up because it's summertime. And summertime, there's a ton of just social events, right? We've got concerts, we've got picnics, we've got parties, and there's weddings and reunions and all kinds of social activities. And a lot of times when you're a cannabis user, you may relate to this, you feel like you're the only one. A lot of times you feel like you're the only one not drinking. And depending on whether you're open or not about your cannabis usage, a lot of times you can feel like you're the only one using cannabis. And that, when I talk to clients about this, it's typically the conversation is, okay, well, are you open about it? What are the people around you? What are their thoughts and feelings about it? And what's your strategy? So we're going to talk about all of that today. And I'm going to give you a couple tips. And, because really what it comes down to is I want you to feel super confident about your choice. And in order to be super confident about your choice, you need to know what you're doing. You need to have the knowledge about the plant. You need to know your own reasoning and your own why. And then you need to have some self-trust. And self-trust is really key. But let's talk about that. So sometimes you're the only one. You feel like you're the only one. Let's just take a picnic example, right? You're at a party picnic. You are outside with your family and you are looking around and everybody's got a drink in their hand. And meanwhile, you're like, okay, I dosed myself with an edible beforehand. I'm the only one here. Can people tell? Then you start wondering, right? You're like, can people tell that I'm high? Can people, what do people think, right? There's that thought scenario. And then there's do I stand out? Do I look weird because I don't have a drink in my hand? Do people, when I said no, when somebody offered me a drink, what happened? Like, did they think thoughts about me because of that, or are they like cool with it? Or sometimes sometimes if they're close enough family or friends that you're comfortable sharing with, sometimes how they feel about it, and sometimes you don't. So then you have to play little mind games with yourself. But what I want you to know, like, I'm saying that because I understand how that feels, and I've certainly been there plenty of times, but I want you to feel really confident in your choice, right? Because we need to reframe it. Let's put it this way. We're going to reframe it from you being different, us being different. We're not different, right? We're doing it our way. We're doing what our body likes, right? Because let's put it in a bigger context too, right? Especially when we're comparing it to alcohol, which is, again, in this scenario, let's say that's usually the choice, right? You either got a drink, you can have a drink that everybody brought drinks, or you can have your edible /drink /tincture, whatever you like, right? You can have your weed. Most people at this point, and I don't want to assume that you fall into that category, but I will assume that a large percentage of cannabis users use it because it feels so much better than alcohol, right? Let's just be totally honest. Using alcohol, we know it's a poison. We know our bodies don't like it, right? And at this point, if you're a cannabis user, you've realized the difference probably. You've probably felt the difference, and you've recognized that, oh my God, I don't want to go back to hangovers. I don't want to go back to having an upset stomach in the morning and being dehydrated and feeling like total ass, right? And then being sick and then having it impact, trying to lose weight, making it really hard to lose weight because of all the calories and the fact that it stops your metabolism. And cannabis doesn't do any of that, right? And we feel so much better. And that is your choice, right? That is your choice. You have made a choice for your body. Just like I've made that choice for my body. I got tired of the way alcohol felt. And so I said, no more, just no more. I'm tired of how I feel on this. No more. I want my body to feel the way I want to feel. And that is my choice. And that is the choice that you're making when you choose cannabis, is that you like the way you feel. There is a lot of power in that. A lot of power. And that's really it. And that's the only excuse you need. You know, if people do challenge you, and they may or may not, I don't know your friends, I don't know your family, you know, there is a large stigma around cannabis, though. We know that, right? There is a large stigma. People don't understand it. But the most simple thing that you can say to yourself, and you can say it to others if you want, because this, the God honest truth is, I feel better when I use cannabis, right? I feel better. And that is it. That is everything. I mean, if anybody argues with that, like, why would anybody argue with how you feel? Like, that just, it's so simple. Now, here's the thing, is if you know that you feel better, right? But you still feel a little bit, you know, disassociated, if you still feel a little bit singled out because you're the only one using cannabis in your social circle, at the picnic, at the concert, at the wedding, at the reunion, whatever, then that's a place to check yourself, right? Check yourself if you're still feeling that way. And I'll be honest, that happens to me too. You know, I was at my 25th college reunion. Yes, that's how old I am. And we were there in May, and I didn't drink. You know, everybody else was drinking, of course, because that's socially acceptable. And I had, you know, already dosed myself with a gummy so that I knew I'd have a light buzz, but I wanted to be social and alert and, you know, present because it was fun and I wanted to see everybody. But in the back of my mind, there is a little bit of, do they all know I'm high? Can they tell? You know, am I the only one here? You know, is there anybody out here in this room that is also high, just also took an edible before they came, you know? But what I need to do in that situation, what I did do, and what I suggest you do, and what we all should be doing, is coming back to, it doesn't matter what everybody else is doing, what other people are thinking, but this feels better for me, right? That is all that matters. All that matters. Now, here's the other part, is knowing a little bit about cannabis and how good it is for your body. Yes, even THC. You know, I talk a lot about CBD and I love CBG and the medicinal benefits of all of that. But let's be honest, THC is the most popular version of cannabis because it gives you that buzz. And we all need to kick back. You know, that's why alcohol is so popular, is because it relaxes people and it helps you let go a little bit. And cannabis does that too. It helps you let go. And you can go from, you know, a tiny bit of letting go to a full silly experience if you want, by, you know, giving yourself more and more, just like you can with alcohol. But your body actually enjoys that more than it does alcohol, right? We know that alcohol is a poison. Your body is going to reject it as you give it more. And with cannabis, your body accepts cannabis because, and here, if you don't know this, then I want you to listen up, because this is a game changer. Your body makes cannabinoids. So let me back up a step. Cannabis, the cannabis plant, creates cannabinoids, right? When you break it down, it has, one of the cannabinoids is THC, makes you high. One of the cannabinoids is CBD, doesn't make you high. There's CBG, there's CBN, there's CBC, there's THCV. Those are all called cannabinoids, okay? It's just it's a compound. Then in our bodies, our bodies make cannabinoids too, and they're different. They're different. It doesn't make THC, doesn't make CBD. It makes endocannabinoids. Endo meaning within. So you make cannabinoids in your body, similar compounds, similar structures. One of them is called anandamide. You can look it up. Anandamide is called the bliss molecule. It acts similar to THC. So when you look at the plant has cannabinoids and your body has cannabinoids, then you can see it's a little bit more like taking a vitamin, right? Because, okay, let's look at vitamin D. Your body makes vitamin D, right? You know, sunlight, you go out in the sun and your body starts to produce vitamin D inside. But you can be short on it. So we supplement. We take vitamin D in a little pill so that it helps our body supplement. Same thing we're doing with cannabis is we are supplementing the endocannabinoids in our body because they can be deficient. Now, the hard part is that there aren't really tests to see if they're deficient, and there's not really a way to know. It's more of an educated guess. And that's when listening to your body becomes really important. Listening to your body is always important, but as you'll see, there's a theme here, right, of listening to and trusting your body. Because if you're using cannabis, any type, THC, CBD, CBG, any type, and it makes you feel better, right? You feel calmer, you feel more regulated, you feel more you feel happier, you feel more alive, you feel more present, you feel less anxious, you feel less sad, you feel, less sleepy or more sleepy, whichever way you want to go. You feel better, then it is supplementing your endocannabinoid system. Right? So what I'm trying to say is that you're doing a good thing for your body, right? So, it all comes down to the intention, so let's go back to our scenario. You're at a party, right? With your friends, family, whatever. And you're the only one that had an edible beforehand. Maybe you're sipping on your cannabis seltzer or whatever. And you're wondering, am I the only one here? Can they tell I'm high? Am I the only one that's using cannabis and everybody else is drinking? Then you can say to yourself, I feel better. And I feel better because I'm doing something good for my body, right? And you can be confident in that, right? And that can be very grounded. So if someone was to say to you, I don't know, some people's families are a little bolder, friends are a little bolder than others. Some people might say, hey, why aren't you drinking? Or what do you mean you have to go off and smoke? Then you can say, or you don't have to say it, but you can know to yourself, I'm doing this because I feel better when I do this. I enjoy how I feel. I like the buzz from this. If you like the buzz, if that's true. I'm doing something good for my body, and I am intentionally using this to have a good time, to get a little buzz, and to supplement what my body needs because I feel better when I use cannabis, right? And so that's what I want you to feel confident. I want you to feel confident saying that to yourself or to someone else, and then that might pique their curiosity because if they got a drink in their hand, chances are they're not feeling very good or they're not going to feel very good in a few hours, right? So let's talk about just kind of your options here. I'll tell you what I do is when I go to an event or a function or a social gathering, I have really bad social anxiety. I should say I used to have really bad social anxiety. 20 years ago, I just didn't do anything. I would turn down every request to go to a party. I would turn down, family functions. I had the hardest time getting myself to go to any of those things. And then I started using cannabis and I started using THC for social anxiety. And that has helped me tremendously. It has gotten me to a point where I can go to social events and feel safe. Because before, my anxiety was so bad, I did not feel safe. And I hope that makes sense. Not safe in that someone's going to hurt me, Just my body didn't feel comfortable being in that situation. So cannabis has opened that up for me and allowed my body to regulate in social situations. And what's neat now that I've been doing that for so long is now I don't need it. Right? I don't need it anymore because I've regulated myself to being okay in social situations. I still dose because I want to have a little buzz or just to relax a little bit more, depending on the day. If I need to, start to just take the edge off of something stressful that happened, I do. But it has helped me overcome social anxiety. So I usually dose beforehand. I usually take an edible because edibles last longer. Now, there is a little bit of planning that needs to happen with edibles. You got to think ahead a little bit. You got to think, okay, well, if I'm going to the party at 4, then I need to take my edible by 2:30, right? Depending on knowing your body, when it tends to hit, depending on what it is. You need to make sure that you plan in advance. If you need to drive and you want to make sure that you are clear to drive, you might want to take it a little sooner or a little closer to the time so that it starts to hit more once you're there. It's all your choice, right? It's your body, your choice. But edibles are great for social events because it does last longer. So you will feel a buzz for a good 3-4 hours, which is great. Pre-rolls, joints, blunts, those are extremely popular. Let's say we'll call it old school these days. I guess we could call it old school, right? They have been around for the longest. They are socially acceptable in certain circles, right? And you'll have to be in a place where you're comfortable going to smoke somewhere. I would definitely choose a balanced strain for that. I would definitely choose one that you are familiar with so that you know how you're going to feel. May not be the day to experiment with anything new. But it is fast acting. So it does hit your endocannabinoid system quicker, and it can be great, once you get there, to go ahead and just start off and feeling great right away. Vaporizers, like my dry herb vape that I talk about all the time, is very small and it's very portable. And I typically bring that. Actually, we were at a wedding in May. The reunion I dosed beforehand, but there was never any time to leave and smoke. So that I just had the edible. The wedding we went to in May, I did take an edible beforehand, but then during the reception, everybody's just sort of hanging out. I did take a smoke break and I took a walk outside. It wasn't my friend that got married, so I didn't really know a lot of people there. So it was nobody really missed me, but I took a little walk. I took a little walk and took a little smoke break, which is great if that works in that scenario. Not all situations are going to be that, but vapes can be very portable, very discreet. Again, I would go for balanced strains. I would choose something that's not going to knock you out completely and something that you've probably tried before so that you know what to expect. And again, may not be the situation to be trying some brand new flower that you've never, but it is very portable and very instantaneous. Edibles, again, that long-lasting chill, that long-lasting vibe. Again, know your dose though. Beforehand, take your normal dose. Again, if you're going into a social situation, it's not the time to play necessarily. It's not the time to let me take an extra gummy and see what happens. Just take your normal dose and know how you feel and, save the experimenting for situations where you're comfortable experimenting. It does take a while to activate, but you will feel balanced for a longer period of time. Tinctures and sublinguals, so things you can put under your tongue. Tinctures, those kind of liquid oily ones, or there's mints and stuff out there. God, there's so many things. And drinks, we'll put drinks in this category too because they hit a little bit faster than a traditional edible. And then they can last just as long, right? So you can have that support that's steady and even for the length of this social situation. So, and the drinks are great. There are some cool things in the drink world. The drinks themselves, bring drinks. I brought drinks to parties. I bring drinks to family parties all the time because, it's accepted in my circle and I like them and people like to try them because they're very tasty. And they have 5 milligram ones and 10 milligram ones and more. The 5 milligrams and sometimes 10 milligrams you can actually buy online because there's a legal loophole right now where you can ship those. Anything higher than that, you have to get at the dispensary, and you can find most drinks at a dispensary as well. Some dispensaries even keep them cold for you, which is great. There are also some really neat drink powders where it's like a little packet and you open it up and you shake like a little bit of powder. It's infused into any other drink. So that's a neat option because that's very discreet. You can fit it in your pocket or purse or your partner's purse. And you can just stir that into any drink. So you could get a soda or a seltzer and mix that into the drink. So then you have a drink in your hand and, but you're sipping on it. And then it would be another, it'll be a slower uptake. Because it's you have to sip it, right? So it'll take a little bit longer to kick in, but it's a nice social effect. And once it is in your system, it should last for an hour or two. Those things are, again, they're very portable, very discreet. I recommend them all the time to people in social situations, because it is so easy just to pull that out, while everybody's drinking and feel like you're part of it. But at the same time, you're feeling better in your body, right? Buzzed or no buzz, you're feeling better in your body and you're doing something that's good for your body. So that's it. That's it today. I want you to feel confident when you're in social situations. I want you to feel confident. I understand and I get it, and I'm there too sometimes. What is everybody thinking? Why am I the only one that's high at this thing? Chances are you're not. And whether or not you're comfortable about being open about it, I would encourage you to, because I believe it's time we need to break this stigma. If not, just know yourself. Know that you're doing this for yourself because you feel better, and that you have a basic understanding of the endocannabinoid system, and you're actually doing something good for your body. And now you can just relax and have a little buzz if you enjoy it, or a big buzz if you enjoy that, and just have fun. Just relax and have fun, be confident, and trust yourself that you're doing something good for your body. I hope that was enlightening and helpful. If it was, I would love it if you would share it or rate it and come back for more. If you have any questions or things you want me to talk about on the podcast, I can be reached. My email is beth@cannafitnessnutrition.com. I hang out on Instagram mostly. That's Beth_CannaFitnessNutrition. And I love to hear from you. So keep writing in, telling me what you're doing, what you love, and we'll chat next time.